Hi, this is Arik,
And Aurelia,
and we're here to talk about life and interesting things.
or so we think, but as always, you will be the judge of that.
Either way, what we're going to talk about is
Ageless.
So, hi Aurelia.
Hi, Arik.
The first thing I want to ask to you for this episode of Ageless, I think we're on episode 11 already, is how do you... I mean, maybe this is a weird way to ask this question, and I might rephrase it in another way, but how do you not ever feel used by people?
Well,
Or
I think this is a really good question, and for me, the answer is that I'm here to be of service and to purify through service. I'm sure that, like, in countless births through countless kalpas, I have accumulated a lot of negativity. And this negativity needs to be purified at some point, one way or another. And the best way to purify negativity is by being of service. And whenever, I enter a relationship with a person with that frame of mind, then, they cannot use me in a way that is negative.
So you turn being used into service.
I wouldn't say it like so general or make it like a statement like that, because it's case by case. Because if somebody is just a opportunistic user, so to speak, then I would become an enabler by helping them. And I mean, I've been called many things, but not an enabler. So if somebody sets out to use me, then I have means to either make this known that that's not working, or that, that's not working for me. But in the end, it's not working for them, and then I am of service again. Exactly.
Yeah, that's of service. Yeah, I understand that. But so people do try to use you.
I think it's human nature. I mean, in that selfish way that we all just try to get what we want, in our own fields of greed, I call it.
Okay, wait, so hold on. So, whoa. So wait, so you do, if someone is using you, you turn it into a service, where you're purifying, and then where, even if that includes you're giving them a service by telling them, hey, you can't use me, and this is still purifying some negativity that you have accumulated.
I would think so.
Okay, so let's just start back and work forward. How did you accumulate this negativity? I mean, you of all people. I mean, you're so pure.
But just by being human, like by having a human experience. We are all bound to pick up some negativity.
Right.
There's no doubt about it.
It's the nature of the beast.
And also by proxy. So, I mean, if somebody on the other side of the planet is doing something negative, it also affects me. Like, my vibration is being brought down. So I have accumulated negativity by not doing anything at all.
And then you have to purify that.
And then I have to purify that, because otherwise, I'm just going down. And
Even
I
if you
really don't want that.
Even if you had nothing, quote unquote, to do with it.
Yeah, well, see, everybody's talking about we're all being one, and it's all unified, and it's a unified, field, and yada, yada, yada. But, that would be a consequence of that. If you really know that this is true, then Of course, like I am part of that. And if you stub your toe, then your whole body hurts, and maybe you may even limp for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a little toe.
Yeah, or the big toe.
Or the big toe. But, it's still compared to the whole body, it's little, but it affects the whole body. So it affects us all. Like now, if we'd say there's like so much racial hatred going on right now, and people think they're doing good things by participating in everything. In a spiritual sense, they're really not, because anger and hatred reverberates throughout the field or throughout the universe or whatever you want to call it, and it affects all of us. And we all just have to work harder to not fall into that. I mean, I had recently
it's beautiful.
a talk with one of our friends, and he said, I can't believe it. I'm like freaking out about like the smallest things that, last year at that time, I would have just smiled about, and now I'm just like, I'm getting enraged. And that's what I mean. And so, but then I told him, and hopefully I made a difference. Hopefully I was of service. You know what I'm saying? Or am I?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, it makes a lot of sense, kind of like what you're saying, like how it affects the whole body.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And, that needs to be purified. So if someone's trying to use you, then you just turn it around.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to, like, say... Or, I mean, like... You're aware of it when someone's using you, but then it just kind of feels bad, right? Like if someone's just trying to use you.
I feel sad for them.
I mean, you don't let them use you, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, you don't let them use you even though they think that they might be using you, but really they have another thing coming.
That's right.
But it's really interesting because...
And not from me. I mean, this now sounded like, they have another thing coming that I'm like just sitting there waiting for the right moment to take them down. That's not how it is. But it's like I always say, though, I believe in fate. Like I believe in karma. So I believe that, every action has a reaction and that I don't have to meddle with that.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm not responsible for other people's experiences, A, and B, I don't even know because I do not have the bigger picture. I mean, if I would go back to my Buddhist training from many years ago, then I would say, well, thank you for, acting that way so that I can have the opportunity to purify. Or how they say, like, everybody is a Buddha, but I am not. So then... I mean, that's really just a good attitude to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's define what a user is. Because it's really interesting what you said, like a user, someone who's greedy or, they just want something for themselves. And I know, like, for myself, if someone's trying to use me and it fits with, how I want to use them, then it works.
That's called codependence.
And it's always ends in disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Like, God forbid. But,
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that.
Mm-hmm.
But still, there are a lot of people. I see a lot of patients and clients and customers and even friends and stuff, like, where they just get in, like, these quote-unquote codependent relationships where they're using each other. And, it's just, like... Some people can't even, like, really ask for anything without using them.
That's true.
So how can people, like, stop that? Just adopt this attitude that they have, like, some karma or some fate that they need to purify, or...
Oh, Lord, that's like a packed question. This is, like, takes me probably 100 years to answer. Where to begin?
You have 30 seconds.
Okay.
Give me the 30-second answer.
Well, in order to not be codependent, what we said is at the root of that, we have to understand everything about interdependence. And that goes back to what I said before, that every word I speak and every action I take reverberates through all the universes.
Right.
Was I within my limit?
Yeah. So basically just like have a good attitude about it and like don't feel... I think it's like if you know you're being used in the moment, then be honest about that, and then like don't turn around one day and say like, I've been used. You can't keep using me.
No, because that then would have been probably codependent to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Was codependent with your greed, basically.
Yeah.
And with the other person's greed.
I don't know, yeah, probably.
I mean, I think it's interesting, like what you said, like what's a user? A user is someone who is like...
who selfishly just takes and doesn't want to reciprocate. That's a user.
It's intense.
Very, if you really think about that. It's intense and it's sad.
It's intense because, like, I know that's, like, there's also just different levels to that, too. I mean, you can be, like, a gross user, but you can also just be, like, a unconscious user.
Like with all things, human or spiritual, there are a gazillion levels to it.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, a user is like an abuser.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't like being used. That's how I handle it. I just say, no, I'm not going to be used.
Yeah, if it doesn't suit your codependent issues, like you admitted so beautifully just
Exactly.
10 minutes ago or whatever.
Exactly. Everything's 30 seconds in Ageless.
Okay, I love it.
It was 30 seconds ago. And I say it again in 30 seconds. Because, like, if you're being of service, how do you know you're not feeding that greed?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not an enabler.
Yeah, talk about that enabler
this
thing.
Is like
What's an
where
enabler?
You have to just be very refined without tooting my own horn.
Yeah,
No.
I'll toot it for you.
Okay, well, I am...
Toot.
I am a somewhat refined person, which means I am very perceptive and very sensitive, and most of all, I am not judgmental.
Right, I think that's the key.
And so, I can totally feel if somebody is really using me and it's to their detriment, or if it's just what I call like normal human behavior, where I say like, okay, well, this person, it's like a child, they will learn, and so right now they're in that phase where they just use.
Right, where then people will kind of like their codependent ideas about you then are in a way like fulfilled, but you don't enable them. Like, I guess there's a delicate balance between the two.
Very delicate, and this is then when people say, oh, you used to be so nice. And
what do you mean?
Like when they reach that, when that's no longer balanced.
I don't understand.
But you picked the example.
Yeah, but no, I don't understand like where they reach that balance or whatever.
No, where it becomes unbalanced.
Oh, the codependent, or the delicate balance. You
yes.
mean? Oh, yeah, right. But would they even know it?
They would know it because then it would go into me enabling, and I do not enable.
How do you know when you're enabling somebody?
My foot down, and then they say, you used to be so nice. And I say, well, I'm nicer than ever, but now, it's for you to change.
I mean, when you talk about, like, substance abuse, for example, like, I've had relationships with people that I've been very close to who have addiction problems. And enabling would be like, just you know how I always say, like, sometimes evil speech is also the things you don't say that you should say. This is, like, for me, enabling. Like, you don't say something or take an action, or you do an action that supports the evil ways, really. And by evil, I mean the unchanged ways of another person. Now, of course, I understand, like, compassion and timing and interdependence and just case by case and kind of like, yeah, like, it makes a lot of sense, like what you said, like, okay, this person's like in their infant development, even though they could be like 30 years old or 50 years old or 60 years old or, you know, 10 years old or, you know, whatever. They could be in some, you know, development state, but like enabling would be like allowing that lifestyle of unchange.
Like I said before, I can only repeat that. I cannot give a black and white answer to that because this is case by case.
Okay, I give you a case.
Okay.
So someone, and you know, if you need more details, just ask and I'll supply more details for the case.
Okay.
Someone who is codependent with their friends, like a group of friends, you know, and then they like keep doing things with their friends even though it's taking away time from like what they really want to do with their life or whatever. Where's the enabling?
Where do I fit in? Am I part of the group of friends?
No, you're just no.
Because then it would be very meaningful, and you know it would be great.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. You're in
So.
You're in the group of friends.
Yeah. So then, I really don't see it that you know I would hang out with people as a waste of time, and so if then somebody hangs out with that group of people, it would definitely not be to their detriment.
Why?
Well, because I am there.
And? You're keeping it real?
I'm keeping it real, and whatever group I'm hanging out with is elevated.
How can other people do that?
Well, there are certain techniques, but first of all, you know, you have to want it. You have to want it. Most people do not want it. Most people feel much more comfortable being in a group and then gossiping or doing idle talk or, you know, and that's like talking shit about other people and,
you know what I always said?
Or talk politics or, you know, stuff like that. And that to me, that's a waste of time. And most people will not consider that a waste of time. However, then I will not be part of those groups. So,
but if you were part of the group, you'd be enabling the group.
No, because I would not talk about that.
No, but if you did, then you'd be enabling the group?
My mind cannot go there because, you know, I would not participate in stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, you would be.
Okay, if I would be another person, I probably would be.
Yeah, like if you were a person who was doing that, then you'd be enabling the group. Because you wouldn't be like speaking up for what you know what's true for you and like what you really want to do.
Yeah, I really don't know. That's way too theoretical for me because I seriously cannot relate to that. So I'm really sorry. Because it's like I said, I would not be part of that group. That's not what I consider enabling. And your example about enabling, probably that stands. Like if I know that something is wrong, but for my own reasons, and let's just keep it very simple. Let's say I'm in an unhealthy relationship with somebody and I have very low self-esteem and I want to be loved by them. And so they maybe are these drug abusers, you know, like really substance abusers that you mentioned. And every time the person is high or drunk or whatever, I get a booty call. And then I feel loved. And so I would never say anything to them that they should stop drinking or that they should stop getting high. Because then I would be afraid, that they wouldn't want to see me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be then enabling that bad habit for my own selfish game. Game. Yeah, game is a good one, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because nothing is honest in that. It's all just playing games.
Mm-hmm.
But the enabler is always selfish.
Okay.
As selfish as the user.
Okay, I understand. So it's about being selfish.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. And so then that, circles back, I guess, to the greed aspect of it.
Yeah, whoever is selfish is also greedy. Because they just want to take and not share.
Okay. Let's talk more about that after this short break. This episode of Ageless is brought to you by Aurelia Essential Oils. Wellness for you and everyone around you. Visit AureliaEssentialOils.com. Okay, we're back and we are talking about being used by people and how to best handle that. And then you also brought up something really interesting about enabling and just like how people are selfish and greedy, and that's what users basically are. But who do you think is more greedy? The user or the enabler?
I think that is pretty balanced. I think they're both equally greedy.
Mm-hmm. So then, like, relationships that are built on this also delicate balance, like where you say that, you let people use you or, whatever, and then, like, you don't they're not really using you, but you're purifying some fate that you have. But, like, for them, they're just, like, devouring, whatever they're devouring out of their greed. And, like, you handle that delicate balance, but then also I think it's a delicate balance between an enabler and a user.
Yeah, for example, in my case, I could not be an enabler because I have no personal gain.
Right.
An enabler always has a personal gain.
Okay, so you're enabling if you're also using the other person.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Like, for anything, emotional security, financial security, social image.
Yes.
Avoiding loneliness, avoiding change, whatever.
Yeah.
So how can you, like, get to a place where then, like, you don't need to use people?
Well, I guess this comes from a lot of self-confidence and faith.
So is that, like, then why when people become more confident and they have more faith, then they, like, their relationships change?
Definitely, yes.
Maybe that's also why people in relationships like that, they don't like it when people are, like, getting more confident and getting more faith, because then that dance is, like, coming to an end.
Exactly, and this is why, with your beautiful example of the buckets of crabs, like the people, that hold the person who wants to change and wants to get out of those codependent dances, just holds them back.
For our listeners that don't know about, the story of the bucket of crabs, like I always tell it during, the month of Cancer, which we are soon approaching. It's basically, there's this young fisherman and he's on the pier and he's walking down the pier and he sees an old fisherman and he is fishing for crabs on the pier. And as he catches the crabs, he throws them in a bucket, but the bucket doesn't have a lid. So the boy goes up to the old fisherman and he says, "Hey, excuse me, sir, your bucket of crabs doesn't have a lid on it. Aren't you afraid that they're gonna escape?" And then the fisherman says to the young boy, "Oh," his some Santa Claus voice or whatnot. He says, "You see, you don't have to worry about that, because as soon as one crab reaches to the top of the bucket, the other crabs with all their might pull that crab down so that he can't escape. And therefore I don't need a lid."
And I love that story again and again and again.
And that's the story of the bucket of crabs. So I guess, that's basically that codependent dance that's there.
That's right.
But you can go like a whole lifetime in a relationship with somebody and be used, and it can quote unquote work, but I'm sure there are like some symptoms. Like, I honestly wouldn't know, because I can't do that. I just can't. I cannot be in this kind of relationship with anybody.
I mean, people obviously have these kinds of relationships, and this is why, there are so many divorces and so few really committed relationships. Because, it's not working out, then people move on, and then they repeat the dance with somebody else.
Yeah, they move to another bucket of crabs.
Yeah.
But it's the same patterns and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are being used, then basically you want to be used.
Yeah, out of your codependent reasons.
So people want to be used because they want to be useful?
I don't know. I just like it how Annie Lennox says it, Some of them want to use you, some of them want to be used by you.
Exactly.
And that's just how it works.
They want to be used. That's a whole nother dynamic to it, though. Because, there are the users who are like sharks. And then there are the ones who want to be used, which would be like...
I think my example,
starfish.
Like with like the booty call, I think is really, it may not be so very delicate, but I think it's a good example because, everybody gets something out of it.
Yeah. Interesting. So I guess basically you just have to like be fulfilled so that you don't want to use or be used by others.
That's beautiful.
Because I think if you're fulfilled, then you're not really like seduced, tempted, prone, or susceptible to being like supplemented or supplementing by others.
Yeah.
And you can only have fulfillment through the confidence, through the faith, and I would say certainty.
Yeah,
and
that's what I meant.
Yeah, I think, it's another podcast, we can talk about faith and certainty, but it's, I think it's, you have to be really courageous to do that, because I know that just for myself, like, when I was really insecure, I had to always like just use people to supplement any kind of feeling of I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Like kind of like, okay, like I accumulate people around me, then I must be doing something right. Yeah. It can, all go off a bridge, but, at least it looks right, because, guess what? I'm with other people.
Yeah.
So, it looks right.
Me, on the other hand, I would have always be considered a loner. Because of that, because I, never wanted to play these games. Like, the idea of a clique was, like, a horror to me. Like these groups of people that we were talking about before the break. Oh my God, with like their senseless chatter, I would just rather sit under a tree and, watch ants go by. And I always had like a handful of really good close friends, but I never was surrounded by many people. And this is part of what's so scary to people, as you know from our work, that when they stop being codependent and when they start to break out of these patterns, then they feel entirely lonely for a certain amount of time. Because, the bucket of crap, so to speak, they won't let them go easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I often tell people that we work with, like, if you're not feeling lonely at some point, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's true.
And I have been accused of not being codependent with people, and I say, thank you.
Yeah, that's true. Because you're either codependent or you're real.
I want to be real.
I want to be real. Because I want to be ageless.
That's right. That's exactly what this is about.
Because if you have to continuously bend over backwards and, not being centered within yourself and like doing all these like unwholesome things, then your body will pay you back by aging.
That's right.
Ungraceful.
And also, because then you're not then you're doing like a bad yoga.
Yes.
Then you're doing like a bad yoga where you wear and tear your joints and your skin.
Yes.
And your organs.
Yes.
And your chi.
Yeah.
But if you look at it from another perspective, then you see that the real way is the ageless way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it sounds funny, but it is really true.
Because like you always say, time, I have eternity.
Yes.
And that's because you have like the agelessness.
Thank you. I would say so.
Well, thank you for having this and previous and future non-codependent discussions.
My pleasure.
It's really quite an honor. And this has been Arik
and Aurelia.
And you've just listened to an episode of
Ageless.
We hope you've enjoyed. Please subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all over the internet. We're there for you, and we soon have some very exciting announcements and some awesome expansions to share with you guys. So please stay tuned, subscribe, and share with your friends. Bye-bye.
Bye.